Welcome to a new video called The Others, where I just talk about the other games that happened. I want to kind of diversify Swoop and talk about the other teams, the games that I watched and stuff. So let's just kick this off. So if you watched Footy Abroad when I do it with Blue, with Terry and Jake from Saints TV, I actually had Carlton as my lock. I can't remember how much I said they were going to win by. I think I only said like a couple of goals or something, but they absolutely blew Geelong out of the park. And when you got Kerno kicking five, Harry Mackay doing his thing, Tom De Koning is just incredible, right? And we know that their midfield is good. We know they got Sam Walsh, Patrick Cripps, and now they're a game clear in second spot. So they've pretty much got top four locked up, I would say. But they have been immense, especially in this game. This was going to be their biggest test. They lost to Geelong earlier this season, and they did. They smashed Geelong. Geelong though, we always say, oh, Geelong too old, blah blah blah, too old, too slow. They're starting to look a little bit old now. Their older players are looking old. They started the season 7-0, and I think that's mainly because they had a pretty good run. Because they didn't have a good season last year, so they get a bit of an easy run at the start. But since that 7-0 start, they're now 1-6 in their last 7 games. So Geelong could be on the outer of the top eight. We talked about it on Footy Abroad, who we sort of thought would fall out of the top eight. Couple of them said Geelong, but you can see it now that when Carlton just put him to the sword in that last quarter, Geelong just had no answers. Tom Hawkins goes down with a foot injury that they're hoping is not the same. The biggest talking point out of the game was the Dangerfield tackle on Walsh. I don't know, like pinning the arms and then driving down. It probably wasn't a dangerous tackle like a sling, but pinning the arms, I guess they just don't want to see that. He got a week. They're going to fight it in the tribunal, so we'll kind of see what happens from there. But one thing I do want to mention from this game that I absolutely loved is that it was the Carlton Respects game. So that's raising awareness for family and domestic violence. And Carlton and their fans and stuff, they raised over $350,000 for their Carlton Respects. So that is absolutely incredible. It's something that I hold near and dear to my heart. That whole cause. You would have seen me do in the other videos and stuff. With the violence against women, and it's something that I really hold near and dear to my heart. So for Carlton, as much as I hate the team, I respect their respects and I respect exactly what they did. But Collingwood could verse them in the first week of finals, and that would be bloody interesting. The second game is Port and Brisbane. Now, Brisbane have been coming hard these last couple of weeks. We know they started 0-4, and there hasn't been a team to make finals since 0-4, so they've got a lot to do. Players have been going down with ACLs and injuries and all this in between, and they go over to Port Adelaide to see what they can do against Port. And Port, Hinkley, not so much coaching for his future, but he's coaching. He's definitely coaching for something, right? Because they haven't been able to produce anything. I've been calling Port pretenders this whole season. I think they're one of the teams in the eight that are definitely going to drop out. They're only eighth on percentage. I think they're only 1% higher than Melbourne is at the moment. But Port, for them singing "Never Tear Us Apart" at the start of the game, they were torn apart by the Lions, and it reminded me, and people were saying it as well. It reminded them of. Do you remember that era of Port where they used to have the tarps up on their seats because they didn't have a lot of spectators? That was at 2007-ish. Was it 2007-ish Port? It was old Port, right? That's what it reminded me of. They were just picked apart by a ferocious Lions team, and Port definitely have to be one of my pretenders so far, and they haven't really done anything to prove that they can be good and they can go ahead. They do have a stacked midfield. They did, they recruited so sort of players, but I see them dropping out of the eight. But this game, it says more about Brisbane than it does about Port. Brisbane, absolutely incredible. They're coming hard for that eighth spot, or the top eight anyway. I see them getting as high as maybe sixth, which would be really interesting because you don't want to play Brisbane in the finals because we know what they can do. We saw it. Collingwood saw it last season. We know what they can do, and that was a really big statement win against Port Adelaide. The next game was the Battle of the Bridge, Giants versus Sydney. And I thought the Giants were going to roll Sydney. I thought, okay, this might give Sydney their second loss. The Giants, they're good. They've been playing in a little bit of patches, but it was the big bro versus the little bro. And Sydney, well, like, what more can you say about Sydney that hasn't been said? In this game, Gordon picks up his third Brett Kirk medal in a row. Taylor Adams has a good game. Brody Grundy, my boy, I think he's an all-Australian ruckman at the moment. He is just doing everything. He is exactly what City need. And we just talked about who Port sort of got in through their trades. And you look at who, comparing to who Sydney brought in, and just Brody Grundy, Taylor Adams, that role player, playing a similar role to what he did at the Pies. But he or they, their recruits have just been incredible. And Sydney has been sort of, slow on their sort of starts of the game. There was a stat that went out a couple of days ago. But Sydney's second half was immense, and something that you would see from a premiership contender, and it's probably their premiership to lose, and this just gives them more credentials this game. They kicked 7 goals straight at one point. I think that was on either side of halftime. And the Giants just didn't have any answers. There was a point where the Giants did sort of come back and they did take the lead, but Sydney just put their foot down and absolutely let them have it. And kind of like what Brisbane did to Port, they just picked apart the Giants. Next game, Melbourne versus North Melbourne. And after what happened to Collingwood last week with North, I thought North were going to beat Melbourne, and I tipped them, and they nearly did. It's different. As a Collingwood supporter, you go, oh, Melbourne played worse than us almost. But, it's hard to compare because we had to come back from 54 points. Melbourne had to sort of sustain a lead and hold that lead when North were really coming hard in that last quarter. But I want to talk about North Melbourne because I think their bad times are past them. Alistair Clarkson came out and said, we don't know how to close out close games because we haven't had to practice it because we haven't been in close games, which is, I guess, fair enough. But now they're starting to get into those games. And North in a couple of years are going to be an absolute force. It's kind of like, what you're seeing with Carlton and the Giants. When you have so many first-round picks, you're bound to be good eventually. And I think North, they've got that sort of, not even a skeleton, they've got a bit of muscle on them now. A couple more years for Sheasel, like Wardlaw and these sort of guys. Hopefully they keep LDU. I'd love to have him at the Pies. Hopefully they can keep LDU. Zurha scored another 4 goals. So they're going to be incredible. I'm spewing they didn't win. I do have a real soft spot for North Melbourne. They really haven't done anything to me personally. Do have soft spot for North Melbourne. Melbourne, on the other hand, I just don't like them. But other than that, I thought they played okay. Gorn sort of doing his thing. They did it without Petrarca as well. Their first real game without Petrarca. I think there was a graphic that had about 15 players playing their first game without Petrarca in Melbourne. So that was insane because he ended up playing 145 games straight or something like that. Jack Viney really stood up for them. The biggest incident to come out of that was the Stephen May staging thing. He gets only an $1,800 fine, which I think is a little bit stupid. Should have been a suspension because that did sort of change the game. They go up from that free kick and kick a goal. So I think it should have been a little bit more than that, an $1,800 fine. What's that to a guy that's on 800,000 or whatever he is? But very proud of what North were able to produce, but Melbourne get the win there. The second last game, which was today, I was watching this game on my iPhone while I was eating a bagel from Bakes and Bagel. Shout out, Dulaj, if you're watching. Amazing bagel. I got the chicken bagel. Essendon West Coast. So the thing about this game, again, I didn't tip West Coast, but I thought they would give Essendon a run for their money. In the end, Essendon had a bit of a comprehensive win. The Eagles just can't find consistency throughout the game. They have patches where they're good, patches where they're bad. But the thing about this game was the Eagles dominated stoppages and clearances, but just couldn't score. They kicked 5-10 from their stoppages and clearances, whereas Essendon kicked 10 goals, 1. So that's where the game's won and lost. It's just a mixture of that young and the old with the Eagles, and the young can't sort of produce. But I did like what I saw. There's no real sort of quote-unquote bad teams at the moment. Yes, there are teams that haven't won a lot, like North Melbourne and West Coast and Richmond, but these teams are really competing, and they can cause headaches down in the future. Like Collingwood have Richmond, I think the 5th, round 20 or something, and Richmond are doing better than what the ladder suggests. So that can cause problems. North nearly caused a problem to Melbourne, West Coast to Essendon, but now Essendon are in that top 4. for so long I hadn't rated them, but I think I am. I think I have to now. I can't avoid it because they are in the top four. They are sitting third. I had them dropping out of the eight. I can't see that now. It's going to be really interesting if the top four is three of the biggest Victorian clubs, and then South Melbourne, I guess. So four big Victorian clubs. I did like Essendon for parts. I still think any other team that dominates stoppages and clearances and can score, that's going to be, if Essendon can't even close West Coast down, that's a bit of a worrying sign to me as an outsider looking in. So they really have to stop that, because any other team like Carlton, Pies, I was going to say South Melbourne, Sydney, they'll score against that, and they'll make them pay. But thankfully, Essendon were playing West Coast and they win a game at Marvel. The last game was the Freo Suns game. I didn't watch this one live. I watched the KO Mini. The Suns started well, but they started to sort of so they started to fade out a little bit. Freo, they're a bit of a roller coaster side, They can be, when they're really good, and when they're really, really bad, and we saw it recently, they're absolutely shit house. But their midfield of Young, Brayshaw, Sarong, Sean Darcy had a really good game. But that Young, Brayshaw, and Sarong, phenomenal. They could be one of the better midfields in the competition, along with Blues. Us not at the, or Collingwood not at the moment, because we've got a couple of important cogs missing, but Sydney as well. But yeah, look, the Freo are just, I really don't know. I think Freo are a better team than Port Adelaide. I don't think Freo are pretenders. They could do a little bit of damage in finals. I don't think they bat too deep. There's, I feel like their forward line needs to be worked out a little bit. But with the Suns, they had a chance to go into the top eight. They had a chance to finish this round fifth if they had just won by a couple of goals. Now they're sitting 12th in Damien Hardwick's first hit out as Suns coach. It was a bit of a fight back. They were 30-something points down, or 35 points down in the end. And then I think they chopped it down to about 15 points. Was a little bit of fight back, but not enough. And Freo ran out 20-point winners. So the thing about this game is, the top eight is starting to look a little bit more settled. Towards the bottom of the eight, there's a lot of teams just on percentage. So percentage is going to become a major, major factor. We've seen a couple of close finishes to the season recently, and this one is going to be no doubt. I think the biggest game for me out of all this one was, Carlton did well, but it was the Port Brisbane game, because Port are showing that they're absolute pretenders, and Brisbane are starting to get on a roll, and they're starting to be really scary. But anyway, guys, this has just been my other video. Let me know if you like this. If you don't, I want to obviously do this every week and just give you my thoughts on the games. It's not going to be too in-depth. It's just going to be my notes that I've taken down during games and stuff like that. But let me know your thoughts down below. What was your favourite game, or your favourite non-Collingwood game of this week? And until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, and until next time, double shaggers. I'll swoop you later.